welcome to Delectable Flavours. Today I'm back again with another simply delightful tutorial, and in this tutorial I'll be teaching you how to decorate, ice, and make a beautiful minion cake. Now for this recipe you will need a batch of my vanilla cake. I have 3 6-inch cakes over here, and I've dyed them blue to represent the minion suspenders, and you can use more or less food coloring depending on how you like it. I've left a link in the description box on how you can make these beautiful cakes. I've also got my vegan American buttercream that I've dyed a bright yellow, and I also have my lemon simple syrup. Both of these recipes are also in the description box below. So now what we're going to do is actually put our cakes and then simple syrup them right away, and then start decorating again, and then simple syrup as we go. You can simple syrup them beforehand and then put them in the fridge. That works as well. And I'm just going to spread this around a little bit so it can cover as much cake as possible. One more swipe, and that's good, and I'm going to keep the excess in my bowl. Now what I'm going to do is get my first cake layer. It's easier to use chilled cake layers to decorate as they are more firm and they can actually hold up better. I'm just going to take the parchment paper off on this plate here as the crumbs do fall off, and now I'll bring it back onto my turntable, and I'm just going to gently pop this on, and I'm going to try to center it my best. So what you want to do for your cake is, if you notice that the inside is not getting cooked and you put it in the oven to bake longer and you get these caramelized or burnt looking sides, don't worry, that's just caramelization, and you can just cut that off to show your beautiful cake. So I had some caramelization, I cut it off, and now I'm back again with another beautiful cake. So what I'm going to do is get my lemon simple syrup. I like to use lemon simple syrup as it's not as sweet as regular simple syrup, but if you like to use regular simple syrup, feel free to do so. So I'm just gonna lightly brush it on. I just recently baked these, so the moisture is still pretty good, but if you're going to use a cake for a later use, or if your cake is going to sit in air for a long time, you should definitely use simple syrup. It's not mandatory though, it just enhances your cake. So now what I'm going to do is put my brush back into the bowl and get my icing and put on a nice smooth layer. I'm not going to put too much. So what I'm going to do is plop on a little icing using my spatula. I'm not going to use the spatula as I don't want any cake crumbs to go into my icing, but I will scrape some off on the sides. I'm just not going to put it right in the middle of my icing. So I'm just going to take my bowl and I'm going to plop on a little bit. If you prefer not to use firm buttercream, then you do not have to do so, but it's just easier to use firmer buttercream as it holds its shape much better. Now using my offset spatula, I'm going to turn my icing into the shape of my cake. Make sure you turn the turntable, try to not turn your spatula. In the end, you do want to lift your spatula off, otherwise you will get these weird indentations. And I'm just going to take one sweep and pull, one sweep, pull. I have a big glob of icing, I'm just going to put it back in, and I'm going to keep going. One swipe, take off the excess, and there you have it. When you have more icing on your cake in the starting, it is definitely easier to ice. To be using this cake layer for my second layer, you can use any cake, it doesn't really matter. It's just what you feel is right. Or if you look at it and you feel as if one has more air bubbles, I'd suggest using that one for the top, as you want your base to be stronger so it can support the whole entire cake as well as the buttercream. That's good. So what you're going to do to get a smooth top is flip your cake upside down and then peel off the parchment paper and then place the top onto your cake. So now what I'm going to do is ice my caramelized side. It is a bit caramelized as it was the bottom, but it's not a big deal as it is super flat, so it's great to use for icing the top of your cake. So what I'm going to do is add supports to my cake just to stay on the safe side, even though it is only 3 layers. And what I'm going to do is just measure it, and then where I see fits, I'll cut. And cutting 2 straws in half, I got 4 supports that I can use for my cake. And I'm going to put them close to the center, not too close to the edge. And then where I can't push anymore, I'm going to get another straw, just push down, and then lift my straw back up. And now I'm trying to do a diamond shape. So I'll put one in here. I'm just gonna roughly sketch this out of my brain. One here, and then one right over here. And I'm just gonna push down using the straw. And what I'm going to do is just put a little bit of icing to fill in those gaps. Now what I'm going to do is do the edges of my cake, and I'm just going to put some icing on. I'm not going to put too much because this is a crumb coat and I don't want to waste my icing, so I'm going to do a little bit at a time. So I've just lightly cleaned my straight spatula and I'm just going to scoop on some icing and try to spread it on evenly. Now that we're done our crumb coat, we're gonna put our cake to chill in the fridge for about 1 hour, or you can put it in the freezer to chill as well. But make sure if you're living in a hotter climate to put it in the fridge for 1 hour. If you're living in a colder climate, 30 minutes should be good. So I've just put my cake to chill in the fridge for about 1 hour, and now I'm going to apply the final coat. You will need your yellow icing. I have remade and recolored more icing as I did need more. And then you'll need your spatula and offset spatula to do the top. And you'll also need a bench scraper. If you do not have a cake bench scraper, you can just use your spatulas. So what I'm going to do is put my cake bench scraper to a side as I don't need it right now. And I'm going to start just applying icing. You're gonna apply a lot to the sides and then you're gonna scrape it off in the end. So don't worry if you're putting too much, as it's not gonna stay there in the end anyways. You just wanna plop some on. And then using your spatula, you'll want to spread it around, but not too thinly because you still want it to cover the cake. And now I'm going to keep going. I'm just going to use this spatula as it does not have any crumbs on it since we already did our crumb coat. And now what I'm going to do is get my cake bench scraper and make turns, but I'm only going to make 1 turn at a time and then scrape off the excess. So what you're going to do is put your bench scraper at a 90-degree angle. You're going to scrape 1 full turn. And then pull. And now scrape all this excess icing off onto your bowl. As you can use that later. You can also use your spatula to help you scrape it off. It's easier to make sharp edges using a clean cake bench scraper. Now I'm just going to do 1 more swipe. going to pull this off. And now we're just going to check if everything is looking all right. You can see that there are some air bubbles on the bottom, so I'm just going to fill in more cream and then rotate again using my cake bench. Right now I'll set it aside on my paper towel and then just clean off my hands as there's some dried icing on my fingers, and now start this process again. If you do mess up, it's okay, just take off your icing and then just put it in the fridge to chill again with another crumb coat and just start again. It's easier to ice your cake when you have stiff buttercream. So you need to make sure that before you ice that your buttercream is fairly stiff and not melting as your hands touch them. I'm applying lots of icing to the bottom as it's going to be scraped off anyways. Now I'm going to get my cake bench scraper once again using the straight edge, as the cake is not going to have any designs on the edges. And you'll want to make sure that you're staying straight. And then pulling and then scraping the excess off again. I'll use the spatula to scrape it off. Now I'm going to check if my cake is looking good. I see that there is a huge overhang of the wall here. That means there's not enough icing on the top portion over there, so I'm just going to apply more. Now that that's all good, I'm not going to worry too much about the top. I'm going to put this in the fridge to chill again for about 30 minutes to an hour, and then I'm going to do the top. After finishing the sides of my cake, I have just chilled it, and now we're going to work on finishing the top. I'm going to use my offset spatula and just pull the excess over. And now that I've cleaned up the edges, I'm just going to put a little bit of icing on top. I'm going to do one light scrape using my cake bench scraper, just to ensure that everything is nice and even. So before I put my ganache onto my cake, I'm going to actually let this set. And for your ganache, you're going to be using white chocolate. So I have left a ganache recipe in the description box, and make sure that you use white chocolate instead of semi-sweet or milk chocolate chips, as we are coloring it blue. But before we do that, we're gonna let this chill in the fridge for about 10 to 20 minutes. So I've just made my ganache, and I've let it sit in room temperature for about 30 minutes, and it's at a pretty good consistency. And I just wanted to show you, I have this sea blue color. I'm going to be using this ganache as the drips on my Minion drip cake, and I'm going to be using a piping bag fitted with a round tip. You can also use a squeeze bottle, or you can use a spoon, depending on what you like or what you think you have more control over. I have fitted the ganache into my piping bag, and now I'm going to pipe on some drips. I'm going to pipe some fairly large drips onto my cake. Then that's looking pretty good. Now I have these beautiful drips on my cake, and these are going to resemble the water on the island. Now I'm going to make a border using my remainder ganache, and I'm going to fill it in. So once you're done putting your ganache on your cake, put it in the fridge to set again for about 10 to 20 minutes. You can do it for more if you feel as if your ganache has not set. But in the meantime, what we're going to do is get some biscuits. You can use graham crackers or any cookie. And these are going to resemble sand for us. Now, if you have a mini rolling pin, you can totally put it in a Ziploc bag and then hit it with a rolling pin, or you can use a wooden spoon. You can also use a food processor or a grinder if you like. So now that we have our ganache all set, we are at the last step of decorating this beautiful cake. So with our crushed biscuit pieces, it doesn't have to be totally crushed. If there are little chunks in your sand, that works as well. But if you want, you can sift them out. I think it gives a good texture. So what I'm going to do is basically make an island on this side and then leave a bit of water so that my floating minion can fit in the water like it's swimming around. And these two are going to be standing on the island along with these two tree toppers. So what you're going to do is decide your front and back. Your front is going to be the portion of where the water shows, and the back is going to be where the island shows. But make sure you don't take the sand too far. You do want to leave a little bit of a barrier as it is an island. So what I'm going to do is get some of my biscuits and just put it on my cake to resemble sand. So what I just did is got my sand and just made a crescent shape, and I also put my minion in the center of it. I first put my minion in just to make sure I have enough space, and I don't want to make my minion look too tight in the water. So I just put my minion while I was doing the sand portion. And now that my sand is done, I'm going to add my cake toppers. I'm going to add one tree right over here. And these trees I made using a 3D printing pen, but you can buy them. They should be available at most stores. And now what I'm going to do is put my minions sitting on my cake. They are a little bit heavy, so I need to be careful that they sit on my cake. And they're just sitting around there and they look very happy. After watching this tutorial, you can expect even more beautiful and lovely tutorials as well as recipes, so do not forget to subscribe for all of those amazing recipes. Now please give it a big thumbs up to let me know if you like videos like these and would like to see more of them. Till the next recipe, bye bye!